Welcome to Walk in the Park. My name's Tony Ingram, and this week, this is the date on this show here. This put me over there. Yeah, that helps. Episode 37 on February 6th. So last time we were at the Grand Canyon. I'm gonna get back to where I was supposed to be here. The Grand Canyon in Arizona, Grand Canyon National Park. Here is a view from space. This is a NASA photograph from a satellite of the Grand Canyon and the surrounding area, Grand Canyon National Park. And what we did was we visited with some folks from Ithaca, Jim Rundle and Tammy Lovell. And they had taken a trip to the Grand Canyon, had gone up to the northern side of the Grand Canyon and hiked to the southern side of a 25-mile trip with two other people. And it took 5 days to do it, and they told us all how they did it, all their camping supplies and that sort of thing, and the strategies they looked at, and the amazing things that they saw along the way. Like here in the inner canyon, and this is looking down into the Grand Canyon from the North Rim and the North Kaibab Trail and so forth. So that was a really good trip. So if you want to see that show, you can go back to let's see, look there on the bottom. There's IthacaFingerLakes.com. You can see all our shows at IthacaFingerLakes.com. That's my blog, and you can scroll down on that blog, and you'll see Walk Across Grand Canyon. That's the name of that episode. So, okay, so today we're actually going to go back to the Grand Canyon because a couple of years ago I was there myself. I was there in I think it was October or so of 2010, and I visited the Grand Canyon for a few days, and then I did a show in November 2010 about my visit to the Grand Canyon, but mainly I was comparing the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River watershed with the Finger Lakes and the watershed it's in, which is the Seneca Oswego River and Great Lakes St. Lawrence River watersheds. So that's what I did, and I thought it would be fun to look at that again. That's pretty interesting. So I'm going to take us back to the Grand Canyon. So just stand by here. I'm going to put up a picture here while we get ready to cue up the segment. Okay. So when I first started working for the state parks, I was in love with the region and in the Finger Lakes region and of course the Cayuga Lake area in general because it was my home. And I learned the geologic story behind it. And the first place I had really learned the geologic story was in another valley across the country, and I'd gotten excited, the geologic story of that valley. And so I was very interested in geology. And I looked at the Cayuga Lake Valley and the gorges and the entire area as having every bit as much charm and every bit as much grandeur, I should say, as this place, the Grand Canyon, which I was lucky to be able to revisit recently, a couple of weeks ago actually, in mid-November. And I was able to spend a few days there. I was in the Grand Canyon in my youth, in the 60s, the late 60s, early 70s, a number of times, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. But the Grand Canyon, of course, is one of the most famous valleys in the world. It's said to be one of the Earth's 7 natural wonders, and we'll take out a few views of that. Go to this one here. It's just this huge expanse of open rock and desert landscape with in a plateau. You look in the back there, that's the top of the plateau. That is part of the Colorado Plateau, which covers a very large area in western United States. And the canyon is cut in that. So we'll take another look at, okay, this is a diagram, or a map really, yes, showing you the watershed of the Colorado River, because that's the river that flows through the Grand Canyon. And on the right center, you can see it starts. By the way, the yellow area there is the watershed I've shown you a lot of watershed maps. That's the watershed of the Colorado River. So it starts up in the Colorado Rockies, and it flows southwest across northwestern Colorado, southeastern Utah, and northwestern Arizona, and then down to the Gulf of California, or the Sea of Cortez in Mexico, just south of California. I don't show that on the map here, but it goes from about 11,000 feet above sea level down to sea level for, I don't know, maybe 1,500 or 2,000 miles, something in that order. So of course, in our valleys around here, we have lakes and so forth. I'll get to that in a second here. Actually, I want to point out the middle of the map in the bottom. You can see that squiggled area in northern Arizona. That's the Grand Canyon. And then just beyond that, as you get into Nevada, which is just to the left of that squiggle area, you get into Lake Mead and Hoover Dam, which I did go over. I took this picture. And that is Lake Mead beginning there. And it's a very large, long lake, artificial lake. Our lakes here, of course, are natural lakes, dammed up by glaciers. There, it's dammed up by the Hoover Dam, one of the engineering marvels of the 20th century. And Lake Mead is behind it, and Lake Mead provides water for the surrounding area and electric power. And you look at the sides of the lake there, you can see that there is this lightened area. The top of that, I guess, is the top of the water level, the high as it gets. And I understand that the water level in Lake Mead behind Hoover Dam has been going down over the years because of drying of the climate in the area. So that's something of concern. Water from the Colorado River supplies a number of cities and towns in the Southwest, including Phoenix and Tucson, and some of it goes to Los Angeles. So there's lots of issues there. But let's take a look at the Colorado River. There we go. That's down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon is really kind of two canyons. It goes, there's the big wide upper canyon, which is about 10 miles across. And then there's the inner canyon. And down in the inner canyon, it's narrow, it's vertical walls, about 1,500 feet high. The whole thing is about a mile deep. Now you can see the inner canyon in the center of the picture. It's the left of center. You can't see the river in this shot, but it's down in the bottom there. And the whole from the top of the plateau to the bottom of the river is almost a mile. It was about a mile from the north rim and a little under a mile from the south rim. The north rim, you can see, is on the horizon there is about 8,000 feet above sea level. And I'm on the south rim, which is where most people go, the most accessible part of the Grand Canyon. Is about 7,000 feet above sea level. Take another look at the Colorado River down on the bottom that has carved this canyon in the Colorado Plateau. And the Colorado Plateau is that entire area that ran from Colorado, Utah, and down into Arizona. And the river, over the last 5 million years, has cut down through thousands of feet of mostly sedimentary rocks to reach its current level down the bottom, which is about 2,500 feet above sea level here. Still has another couple thousand feet before it gets down to the sea. So it's been doing that. The plateau itself is about 15 or 20 million years old. So we'll move on here. And okay, now we're looking across. You see a canyon, but that's not the Grand Canyon. That's part of the Grand Canyon. In the middle of this picture, that's called Bright Angel Canyon. And that's a side canyon. There's this huge geologic fault that crosses the Grand Canyon that's been eroded out by Bright Angel Creek. And so there are some very large side canyons in the Grand Canyon. This is a trail, the Bright Angel Trail, that goes down from the south rim. I stayed in Bright Angel Lodge, and goes down all the way down to the inner plateau, and then finally down to the river. And what goes down must come up. So if you go into the Grand Canyon, it may feel easy going down, but you have to take into account that you're going to have to go back up the steps. This is actually a different trail called the South Kaibab Trail. It's actually steeper than the Bright Angel Trail. It's a few miles to the east. And I took a hike down that as far as I felt confident about being able to get back up from. So, but when I was young, in my 20s, I went down to the bottom a number of times. In fact, even one time walked across from the North Rim to the South Rim on the trails. It was about 25 miles. Ran into a guy who was doing that while I was walking that trail. And right down in the middle of that picture, there is a footbridge and also a pack animal bridge that goes over the Colorado River, a little glimpse of it there. And that's pretty close to your destination. Maybe you've got another mile or so to go. Right in the center of this picture, down in the bottom of the canyon, is Phantom Ranch. And in 1968, I worked there for a few weeks, and they have a overnight accommodations for people that come down on the famous Grand Canyon mules, and also river trips stop there. Sierra Club river trips and other river trips stop there. They stay overnight, and we feed them, and they stay in these beautiful stone cabins and so forth. I made 85 cents an hour plus room and board back in 1968. And I saved money because what could you buy in the bottom of the Grand Canyon? So I actually saved money and bought camping equipment. So this is a spectacular landscape, and I'm going to make a comparison with where we are, as I have in the past, as I mentioned. So here we are looking at Cayuga Lake. From on the lower right is Ithaca, and then in the middle of the picture is Cayuga Lake. Seneca Lake is on the left. On the left. And then at the upper left of the picture is Lake Ontario. And that's where the water from all these eastern Finger Lakes ends up. It goes through the Seneca River and then the Oswego River into Lake Ontario. I'll take another shot here. I'll show you the entire watershed of the Seneca and Oswego rivers. It includes most of the Finger Lakes, everything from Canandaigua Lake east, and also includes Oneida Lake and Onondaga Lake, Onondaga Lake in Syracuse, and that water all goes to Lake Ontario. So that's our big watershed. So this is a huge geologic feature, kind of like the Grand Canyon in itself, that has been created by amazing geologic forces in its own right. So this is the bigger picture of where the water goes. If you can, I'm sure you can recognize the shape of New York State there. And again, in this picture, the yellow is the watershed of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence River Basin river system. So we get all the water from the Great Lakes. We're the last lake in the east in Lake Ontario, and our water flows into there, and then in the St. Lawrence River up through Canada and out into the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the Atlantic Ocean around Newfoundland. So that's our watershed. So what are some other comparisons I can make with the Grand Canyon? Gee, well, we have our staircases. We have steep stairs. They go up hundreds of feet, not thousands of feet, but they're challenging. So we have our rugged areas. Now the Grand Canyon, this is one spot I was watching sunset from what's called Hopi Point, I believe it was. And I was told that this cliff was 3,000 feet high going down. You get a mile deep of a canyon, so this is 3,000 feet of it in a side canyon going down. Well, we don't really have anything on that scale, but we do have our cliffs, like this one next to Teganic Falls, which, by the way, there was a big rock fall out of this area in the middle of this picture here. I don't show it, that the picture's been going around on the internet. Huge rock fall in November 4th, I think it was. So we have our rugged areas, but our rugged areas have been created by streams since the Ice Age. Here's another rugged area I'm sure you're familiar with. This is the Enfield Glen in Robert H. Treman State Park in the upper end of the glen. There we go back to Grand Canyon, and you can see way down in the bottom there is the inner gorge, and the upper right is that Bright Angel Canyon coming in on the side from the north rim. And there's all these different side canyons. Look at how that's all cut up. So most of what you see in the Grand Canyon is not what the Colorado River's done itself, but the side canyons have done. So why is it so much more rugged? Actually, this is a 5 million year old landscape, and our landscape here is actually largely been shaped since the end of the Ice Age about 10,000 years ago. So let's see what we got. So this is Enfield Glen, much gentler landscape, And then we have at the Grand Canyon, obviously, but we have our side canyons coming into the main valley. And then Taghanic Gorge, in this photograph provided by Bill Hecht, coming into Cayuga Lake from the west, rugged gorge, but only hundreds of feet deep, not thousands of feet deep, but still as Mark Twain pointed out, if you don't draw an arithmetic on it, you can make the comparisons. Here's the canyon of Taghanic Falls, going a mile or so out to the lake. So we'll take another look here at the Grand Canyon and these side canyons, a late afternoon shot here, and all these side canyons. So why is the Grand Canyon so much more rugged, even though the amount of time it's been eroding is maybe perhaps less than our gorges around here? So you've got about 10,000 years of erosion, and here you've got millions of years of erosion. Well, one of the big differences you can notice here is, where are the trees? And the other big things you can notice is that the land is much higher. We're in a plateau here in the Finger Lakes, but we're only about 2,000 feet above sea level. This plateau is 7,000 to 8,000 feet above sea level, so there's a much higher gradient for one thing, so erosion happens much more forcefully when it actually rains, which it doesn't that often, but when it does, you get flash floods, and there's not much vegetation to hold the soil, so you get a lot of erosion on a steep gradient with very little vegetation to slow down the flow of the water and to protect the erosion of the soil. So, you know, these are some of the plants. You get some pines and some junipers, pinyon pines and Utah junipers, and there's a little bit of prickly pear cactus and many other arid zone plants. And actually you get in the inner canyon and you're in bona fide desert where you have less than 10 inches of rain a year. Yet erosion happens rapidly when it does happen. So here's a picture of the side of our valley and some side canyons. This is Buttermilk Falls State Park, taken from Bostwick Road, this picture, on the other side of Inlet Valley. And there's 2-3 gorges in that picture. The one in the sort of the middle is the Buttermilk Gorge, and then just to the left of it is called Owl Gorge, both of them in the state park. Very steep, and but you know, not what we saw in the previous picture with the Grand Canyon. But here's the kind of flow that we get. Yet with the much heavier rains, we get maybe 35, 40 inches of rain a year. And when this was actually October 1st this year, when we had 4 inches of rain the day before and that night. And so Buttermilk Falls is looking like buttermilk, but when it gets this high and higher, it's when most of the erosion takes place. Just like at the Grand Canyon, it's the high water time when most of the erosion takes place. But there's so much vegetation that we don't get the flash floods quite so bad. We don't get the ripping out of the banks and the sheet erosion on the slopes and so forth. So the Grand Canyon is just a spectacular place. It's people. When I was there were people there from all over the world. Of course, I experience that here sometimes. Hear languages, other languages spoke in Buttermilk Glen and Watkins Glen and places like that. But everybody in the world knows about the Grand Canyon. If you come from somewhere else, some other continent, that may be high on your list to get to. It's another image. This is a dusk image. I noticed there were like 2 kinds of sunsets. There was the regular sunset with the fleeting light on the tops of the canyon, and then afterwards there was another sunset from the dusk, so that the twilight, you can still see shadows and so forth. So that was really cool to hang out with that. But we live in a spectacular region, and we should appreciate it and get the big picture of the tremendous forces that have created a rugged and also bucolic landscape in our areas. The Finger Lakes and Cayuga Lake, in our case, that's Taghanic Point sticking out in the lake there. And we should love our area. We don't really need to go away to see spectacular, beautiful landscape. Once again, thanks to Bill Hecht for providing these images. Okay. So there you go, comparing the The Finger Lakes and the Grand Canyon, who would have thunk? Well, there are some comparisons, but now we're going to go talk about current events, like this past weekend, the Super Bowl. See if you can make out any detail on this. It's a very busy picture here. But you'll notice the helmets of the football players have a bird on them. The Baltimore Ravens, if you follow football at all, you know that they won the Super Bowl. But I'm actually interested here, in this case, in the birds on the helmets. If you take a look at them, they have white bills, and they're blue collars around them. And let's take a look at an actual raven, which those are supposed to represent. So we're actually going to go back to the Grand Canyon again here and look at a raven. Boom, there we go. Now look at the color of the bird. It is jet black. And the bill, the large bill, is black as well. So the ravens probably have more in common with the blue jays in terms of the color of the birds. And as a matter of fact, blue jays and ravens are in the same family. So so I thought we'd talk about ravens a little bit. I'm going to read actually something I wrote on my blog, which is the same blog, IthacaFingerLakes.com, Walk in the Park. That I made on Sunday morning before the Super Bowl was played, so I didn't know how it was going to turn out. So I'll just read a few paragraphs from it. As we Americans prepare our couch potato chips, wings, and beer for Super Bowl Sunday between the San Francisco 49ers and the Baltimore Ravens, how many of us really know what a raven is? Well, yes, there is that creepy Poe poem we read in high school. But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling. Straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking with this ominous bird of yore, with this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore, meant in croaking nevermore. Well, I like ravens a lot better than that. But in any case, I guess they're a symbol. But I'll read a little bit about what I learned by doing a little more research into them. Common ravens are in the family Corvidae. That includes crows and jays, as I mentioned. As the Cornell Laboratory of Ornithology describes them, quote, not just large, but massive. Let me see, go back to that raven picture here. With a thick neck, shaggy throat feathers, and you probably can see that. And a Bowie knife of a beak, yeah, a big, massive beak. In flight, ravens have long, wedge-shaped tails. They're more slender than crows, with longer, narrower wings and longer, thinner, quote, fingers at the wingtips. I don't have a flying picture of ravens, but let's see. So common ravens, or Corvus corax, are not so common in the eastern U.S. They are common in western U.S. and in much of Canada, and do venture down into the upper Midwest, upstate New York, northern New England, and farther south along the Appalachians. I remember ravens roost, a stop at a cliff on the Blue Ridge Parkway in Virginia. So this is all I wrote in the blog. Years ago, one did not notice ravens around Ithaca, New York, though they had been here historically. But with the regrowth of forests on abandoned agricultural land, ravens are returning to our landscape. For the last 20 years or so, one has been able to hear their croaking squawks over our gorges and forests. For ravens love to nest on cliffs, and this is the Upper Falls in Lick Brook Preserve, Sweedler Preserve at Lick Brook for the Finger Lakes Land Trust in the town of Ithaca. And many of the gorges of the Finger Lakes region provide secure ledges safe from predators where they can raise the New Year's brood of these large black corvids. So, pretty cool, huh? Ravens. That's kind of nice when we honor an animal, even if we don't get all the details right. Well, a friend of mine was at the Grand Canyon last fall, and after I had posted this blog post about ravens, he saw it, and he wrote me this. I'll put up another picture. This is actually I got from Grand Canyon Natural History Association. A guy named Mike Buchheit took this picture. I hope he doesn't mind me using it. He said, A friend and I saw ravens doing totally mind-boggling aerobatics at the Grand Canyon last fall. We came in from the east entrance, and our first stop was at the Desert View Watchtower. There was a strong wind from the north that was smacking into the south rim and creating a fierce updraft. About a half dozen ravens were busy having fun and showing off their moves. A bird would catch the updraft and take the express elevator up 50 to 100 feet above the overlook and spectators, and then either soar out over the canyon for a few minutes before coming back down for another boost or daredevil fold in its wings and drop like a stone into the abyss at a vicious speed, deploying its wings again just in time to break its dive and miss the rocks below. Then catch the updraft again for more, and then catch the updraft again for more. I guess the wind has to be strong enough and from the right direction so they don't put on this show every day. We were lucky to have the right timing of our visit. Well, this picture here was taken during a winter storm recently. Well, actually, maybe a few years ago. But it's same sort of situation with the birds enjoying the updrafts and putting on an aerial show. So, okay, well, I was going to talk a little bit more about the Grand Canyon, and probably don't have time to get into it today, but there is another story I wanted to discuss, which was uranium mining in the Grand Canyon. And the Sierra Club right now, if you go to their website, you can find out about, well, this is an old uranium mine that's in the Grand Canyon, that was in the Grand Canyon and stopped operating. And it is now, there's a multi-million-dollar cleanup going on. But I don't really have enough time to go into all the details. But right now, the Sierra Club is trying to get President Obama to declare the larger greater Grand Canyon watershed as a national monument, to protect it from uranium mining and logging, irresponsible logging of old-growth forests, and a lot of other impacts. So it's an ongoing program. Hopefully he will respond to that and help save the entire ecosystem and watershed of the Grand Canyon, certainly one of our most important national scenic treasures. If you don't protect the whole place, then you just have a small area, and then outside of it is degraded by other activities. It's kind of sick in my mind anyway. I think we need to look at an ecosystem approach. Well, that's all we have time for today. So I thank you for joining me, and we'll see you again for the next episode next week. Have a good week.